What's up, my wizards? It's Dev from Mtg. We like magic, and I'm here today with what will probably end up being a pretty quick video. Just hoping to maybe open up a discussion about a particular topic. You've already seen the video title, you clicked on it, you're here, and you probably already have a pretty passionate opinion on the subject. But don't worry, I'm not here to tell you one way or the other we should or should not unban Smuggler's Copter or anything. I'm just sort of going to go over some things, point, counterpoint. I'm going to try to present both sides of the argument here, and then we'll discuss a little bit more in the comments section. I just think that enough has changed in Standard that maybe it's time that we could discuss this and it have some value to the community, is all I'm saying. Well, in case you somehow missed the story of Smuggler's Copter, it's possible, maybe you just started playing or you skipped a year. People do that, It was sort of the de facto best card in Standard this time last year. And there's a reason for that. I mean, just read the stupid thing if you haven't done that yet. It should be immediately and obviously a very powerful card. And it's known as the most powerful card in Kaladesh for a reason. And it really shaped Standard around it for the few months it was available to play. Now, Copter was banned on January 9th of this year. I was a little surprised by that. It feels like it's been longer than that, but that's still a good long time, 9-10 months or so without Smuggler's Copter. So I think really that means that the question whether you're for or against Copter sort of hinges on what have we gotten since then to help suppress Copter in Standard, and what have we lost? We just had a rotation, so does Copter even still have its best pieces? So with that in mind, the first thing I'm going to do is sort of look at the stuff that we've gotten since Smuggler's Copter has been banned. And there's a good lot of stuff that could help keep Smuggler's Copter from being so dominant in Standard. First of all, the card was banned on January 9th, and then on January 20th, Ether Revolt came out and we got Fatal Push. So Fatal Push seems like a pretty good answer to Copter right there. We also didn't have a braid before, and we totally have a braid now. It seems like it'd be pretty good for shooting a Copter down here and there. And then Lightning Strike, we have that now. I guess we had Harness Lightning back in those days, but really having Lightning Strike and a braid, I think those are both better tools in a lot of ways to carry against the Smuggler's Copter than Harness Lightning is. And we have those now, didn't have them before. And we've even got stuff like, Dissenter's Deliverance is in the format, Manglehorn, if Smuggler's Copter is that important, it'll get carried in sideboards. And I guess, even Shock. Shock doesn't kill Smuggler's Copter, but it does kill all the, turn 1 guys that crew Copter so easily and so early in the game. So there's that to consider, too. I mean, all of these are cards, especially a Braid, I really want to point that one out again, that have helped to push cards like Heart of Kiran, which is still legal to play, and even whole decks like Marty Vehicles, more or less completely out of the format. You still see Marty Vehicles every now and again, but for the most part, that's because you don't see as many main deck of Braids. So Marty Vehicles can be a deck again. And I think a Braid will have a similar effect on a card like Smuggler's Copter. But there's another reason that Marty Vehicles isn't what it used to be, and I think that reason would also affect Smuggler's Copter, and that's that we don't have a card like Thraben Inspector in the format anymore. Now, the loss of Thraben Inspector hit Marty Vehicles way harder than a lot of people thought it would hit Marty Vehicles. It's still a deck that exists, but losing Thraben Inspector really, really hurt. And the reason I bring that up is because Thraben Inspector was always Smuggler's Copter's best friend. But it actually goes way deeper than Thraben Inspector even, The deck that, inarguably, I think, got Smuggler's Copter banned was Blue-White Flash. Just incredibly dominant deck in the format for a couple of months there. And just, again, I think, inarguably, the deck that ended up getting Copter banned more than any other. And Copter had other homes, obviously. Red-White Vehicles was a big one. And there were a couple of others, It was in Green-Black Aggro, too. But the best shell for it was Blue-White Aggro, or Blue-White Flash, and that was the deck that got the card banned. But if you look at that deck list, here's the main deck, right here without the lands. Pretty much every single card in that deck has rotated at this point. The best cards in that deck, Avacyn, Spell Queller, they're gone, and even Selfless Spirit is gone, and every other card in the freaking deck, Thraben Inspector included, is gone now, and this was easily the best shell for Copter.
And it's gone.
So, bottom line, as far as the sort of support for unbanning the card goes, we have gotten a lot of really good pieces in Standard. Fatal Push, a Braid especially, that would help sort of keep Copter suppressed or at a level of tolerance, at the very least. And also, Smuggler's Copter has lost every single card from its best shell. So, those are definitely huge points, I think, to consider. But there's also a whole other side to this argument, and I think there's a lot of cogent points on that side, too. First of all, the argument that it's lost, like a lot of its best pieces, I think is a good argument, but it can be rebutted by the fact that we do have still a lot of really good one-drop creatures that could easily crew Copter. And a lot of good ones, too, that can still provide you value, just the way Thraben Inspector could, you know. We've got stuff like, in Mono Red, you know, first of all, first I could do a whole thing about Mono Red and Smuggler's Copter. I am really scared of Ramonap Red being able to use a Smuggler's Copter. So there's definitely that to consider. But Mono Red does have Soulscar Mage and Bomat Courier. Both of those are great cards. And having Smuggler's Copter would give you something to do with them once they do get outclassed in the mid-game. So there's that. I'm really scared of Smuggler's Copter in Mono Red with those one-drops. But there's also other colors. Like obviously, Toolcraft Exemplar is still a card, as is Inventor's Apprentice. That card still also exists. So red-white vehicles could actually be a real deck again if we unban Smuggler's Copter, because those one-drops are still really good. There's also a bunch of like really good black creatures that could crew Copter. You know, there's Night Market Lookout, which is great when it crews Copter. It drains for you. That's awesome. And also Vicious Conquistador is a fine black creature to crew the Copter with. And there's Dread Wanderer and stuff too. So there's a lot of great black one drops too that you could easily crew Copter with. And I'm not saying, by the way, I know people are going to say this in the comments. Obviously, you can crew Copter with another 2-drop or a 3-drop or a 4-drop, whatever. But the best setups for Smuggler's Copter involve having decent 1-drops to crew it with. So just keep that in mind. Another deck, by the way, that I'm kind of scared of with Smuggler's Copter is Pirates, oddly enough. You know, can you imagine first turn Storm Tamer into second turn Copter? It'd be ridiculous. Storm Tamer can crew Copter all game until it has to protect it. You know, your opponent finally drew removal for the Copter. Well, Storm Tamer can take its place. So that would be crazy. And that deck gets like Kitesail Freebooter too to crew the Copter, you know, and take more removal out of their hand. So that seems like it would be busted in Pirates, so I'm a little bit scared of that too. I think that just the presence of Storm Tamer really makes Smuggler's Copter kind of a really scary card. But honestly, I think that the biggest argument sort of against unbanning the card is the most broad argument. You know, it seems sort of intangible, but and hard to prove without it actually happening. But I do sincerely believe that unbanning Copter would really push a lot of diversity out of the format. You know, I think that it would probably push these mid-range energy decks that focus on like the Scarab God and Glorybringer, and Hostage Taker and stuff like that. It would probably push those cards or those decks with a relatively high curve out of the format. Entirely. And maybe even the control decks, the control decks have a lot of answers for Smuggler's Copter, but if they can't answer a Copter in a couple of turns, well, you know, the aggro deck just got all the card selection in the world, and they've done like 9 damage to you before you're able to answer it. It's just such a head start for aggro that control has a really hard time coming back from it. And you can even have all the sweepers in the world, and Smuggler's Copter is still going to beat you. So it would probably really keep a lot of the best decks in the format out of the format. And that really depends, I think, on how you feel about energy decks and about blue-black control decks. But if you're sort of analyzing it from a point of objectivity, I really think that no matter how you feel about energy or control or any of those decks, if you think they're unfun to play against or they don't innovate or whatever, I still think that it'd be a healthier format with them than if we use Smuggler's Copter to push those out. Because at that point, Smuggler's Copter is such a powerful card that it probably would revert the format back to nothing but fast aggro decks. Now, I don't know that anybody wants that. I mean, it's really, you'd have the, you know, 4 Smuggler's Copter and 56 other cards problem with like every deck, and I don't know that I like that, you know. And there's plenty of decks that survived without Copter, you know. Obviously, Mono Red Aggro is still a deck, and Green Black was still a deck. You know, they dropped Smuggler's Copter, but they still had Snake and a bunch of other cards. So a lot of decks have proven they can get by without it, but they're just really, really good with it. Just like Green Black Snake, you know, again with that deck, it doesn't look like a Smuggler's Copter deck at all, but it's just such a good card that you're sort of forced to play it. And if everyone's forced to play it, everyone's forced to keep their curve relatively low. Nobody can get to 5 or 6 on the curve. And if you hope to get to 5 or 6 in the curve, you have to really game plan against specifically Smuggler's Copter. Now, I mean, there are cards in Standard like that now. You know, Long Tusk Cub is arguably a card a lot like that in Standard right now. If you want to get to a certain turn count in a game, you have to play with Long Tusk Cub, or you specifically have to include cards to play against Long Tusk Cub. But I think that Smuggler's Copter really takes that concept to the nth degree. Like, it's just... It has proven a little bit too powerful, and I think at the end of the day, my opinion, I'm pretty sure, even after all the thought, is that we probably shouldn't unban it. I do think it's such a powerful Magic card that despite all the stuff that we've gotten to suppress it in Standard and all the things that it's lost, it would still be able to find enough allies in Standard that would probably take over again. And I just don't think anybody wants that. So if you're wondering what the point of the video is, if I'm just going to say we probably shouldn't unban it, it's because I also want to know your opinion. Like I said at the very beginning, I think it's just valuable at this point in Standard with all the stuff we've gotten and with all the stuff that's left Standard. I think it's a valuable conversation to have, you know. So I'm really interested in how you feel about it. I imagine that most people are going to say, keep it banned, you know. But if you, somewhere in your heart, feel like we have room in Standard for Smuggler's Copter and it wouldn't ruin the format, then I want to hear those opinions. You know, if you've got arguments that I didn't lay out here, then again, I am all ears. I am quite open to arguments on this. But anyway, I'm pretty sure I'm tapped out for now. That's all I've got in my brain. This video was just as much for me, you know, I just wanted to sort of lay out all the shower thoughts I've been having about Smuggler's Copter lately. That sounded weird. But, you know, still, just sometimes I find myself thinking, like, what if we unbanned Smuggler's Copters? I just kind of wanted to use this as a tool to organize my thoughts, and maybe you guys are interested in that. So, sorry it wasn't a deck tech. I like to do non-deck tech content sometimes. But if you liked it, and I hope you did, just hit the like button. You can also sub if you're new. I do deck techs. I don't just always, like, you know, babble about Magic for 15 minutes or however long this video ended up. But yeah, sub if you're new and hit the notification bell. You can also follow me on Twitter at SBMTGDev, or you can support me on Patreon if you really feel like it by just going to patreon.com/SBMTG. Link to that in the description and link to TCG Player in the description. If you don't know, they sponsor my content, they help me bring you videos, and they have a lot of really good prices on a lot of really good cards. They seriously have like the best prices on the interwebs. They don't pay me to say that. I just actually think that. So hop on over to TCG Player where you can buy Ixalan sealed product for super, super cheap right now, or even singles product for, again, best prices on the interwebs. And I don't mind saying that. They do. So there's that. But in any case, I'm Dev from SBMTG, and I'll catch you cats later. Thanks for watching, my wizards.